In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my living room, overlooking the can of worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. I am so glad you have joined me today. I am Mark Anthony Arena, and I have special recurring guest Nevin Hira, friend of the show. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great. You know, last time you were on the show, we were huddled in my bedroom amongst piles of moving boxes.
Yes, we were.
And so this time it is a lot better. We're in a normal, civilized home.
It's definitely on its way.
Give us a little bit of background on you for those who haven't heard of you yet.
Well, my name is Nevin. Lived here in Rochester for the last... Wow, what is it now? 30 plus years?
And for some reason you like it.
And for some reason I like it. I'm married, have a child, a good friend of Mark. We've known each other since 7th grade.
So 30 years.
So 30 years. I think I've known you longer than I've not known you.
Yeah. Wow.
I was just telling someone, we graduated high school 25 years ago.
It's nuts.
So at 40 years old, I've been out of high school longer than
we've been younger. Yeah.
So Rochester native, friend of the show, friend of the family, and excited to be here today. Thank you.
And I don't think I mentioned this on the last episode you were here, but Nevin's the reason why my business exists. We were having dinner in March of 2011, and I was doing tech support as a side gig. And I said, someday I want to make this my full-time gig. And he said, have you ever been to 3rd grade? And I said, what? And he goes, have you ever written your name and address on a piece of paper? That's all it takes to form an LLC. So that's what I did, and that's why I now have an LLC. So today, I've got the backlog of articles here, and I found one that I thought you might be able to help me with. Before I forget, I want to thank the fans. We surpassed 6,000 downloads last month. So, yeah, thanks. I appreciate the fans. Keep telling your friends about the show. I hope to do things and discuss things that nobody else is talking about, bringing these tech articles into the public forum so you can be more informed. All right, so I want you to help me with this article here. I'm going to read it, and it's, my usual article with highlights all over it. And this is kind of a long one, but I think we'll be able to do this. So just feel free to, I'll read a couple pages, and then I'll ask you for your opinion. Bloomberg.com 2021, how big tech is importing India's caste legacy to Silicon Valley. In early 2017, Sundar Pichai, who's the Alphabet/Google CEO, returned to his alma mater, the Indian Institute of Technology in Kharagpur in West Bengal, to speak before 3,500 students. He was welcomed as a rock star because he's the leader of the world's most innovative company, right?
Absolutely.
Right, yeah. The CEO of Google comes to talk at your school, and he graduated from there?
Biggest deal ever.
Right? And he reminisced about skipping classes and meeting his college girlfriend, who he eventually married. And he also pitched Google to these soon-to-be graduates. And he said, how many of you want to work at Google? And hundreds of hands went up. And he said, wow, maybe we should open a campus here. As far as feeder schools go, it doesn't get much better for Google than this network of 23 ultra-competitive government-funded IITs, or India Institute of Technology, right?
So let's just put it into reference real quick.
Yeah.
You know, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Caltech, these are some of the biggest IT names.
Mm-hmm. RIT.
IIT in India, I'm not exactly sure which campuses, but the big campuses of IIT are considered some of the finest education in IT you can get. So to put it into reference, the valedictorian from IIT, let's go with Bengaluru, is probably at the same level as a Caltech number one. So graduating from IIT is not a local community college, is not a top 200. You're a top 2, top 3 university in the world.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, so you're at that level. I love it. And I love that perspective. Like, that's why I need you here today, because we don't have that perspective even in the article. What about the number of students? Do you have any idea of the number of students compared to the ones here?
It's probably very similar, which even goes to show how more competitive it is, because America's population being 350 million, India's population being 1.5 billion. Of course, there's a lot of poverty, so people who will never even dream of having an education. But I'm assuming the number of applications to IIT is probably 10 times higher than the number of applications to RIT.
All right, so let's say we have like 5 or 10 big IT universities in America, right? There's 23 over there, but that's still not nearly enough. That doesn't scale, right?
That doesn't scale, not even close.
Right, so 23 universities to serve billions of people.
Correct.
You know, that's really interesting. That's, you know, and this always happens on the show where I go, hey, you know what? Now that I think of it, right? And we come up with something on the fly as we're thinking of it.
And India is also known for a lot of corruption and being able to pay people off to gain admission to some of these universities.
Whoa.
To level the playing field. A lot of it has to do solely admission-based, solely on merit.
On your test scores.
Yeah, so that way, whether your parents are worth millions of dollars or whether you're poor, I mean, there comes a level where you don't have enough money to be in school or be educated.
To even like pay for your books and
right,
food.
to pay for. But once you pass that level and you are a high school student, you are graduating, to get admission to one of these top universities, most of the people are there based solely on merit.
That's really interesting, and we'll get to that in a minute, but that answers a lot of questions about why they do it that way. I like that. It's just a blind system that just goes based on your test scores. Can you be here? And in my opinion, that's fair, right? As you were saying, it's fair, because then anyone can get in based on, can you do the work? Who cares where you came from? That's really interesting.
I was just reading an article the other day, and I don't know the accuracy of the article, but it was talking about like what are the hardest standardized exams that you can take.
Yeah, is it the SATs?
And one would think, is it the SATs? Is it the MCATs? Is it the LSATs? You know, I think the number one rated most difficult exam you can take is a secondary education exam in China.
Really?
Yeah, so to get into a bachelor's program, master's program, not quite sure on the exact details, but is rated the hardest exam. They say the entrance exam to IIT, which is the university we're talking about.
It's a university system.
University system. It was in the top 5 most difficult standardized exams in the world.
I can't imagine. Like, think about how hard we studied, right? And then imagine at that level. That's awesome insight. That's really... So it doesn't get much better for Google than the network of 23 ultra-competitive IITs. Every year, hundreds of their graduates join the world's biggest tech companies. In 2003, when the school system celebrated its 50th anniversary, Bill Gates delivered a keynote speech praising their grads who had come to work at Microsoft. Over the years, noting that the company had in turn invested more money in IITs than any other institution outside the US and the UK.
There you go.
For all the IIT's proficiency, the coders, programmers, product developers, engineers fanning out to global tech bring with them the troubled legacy of India's caste system. Give us, in a nutshell, what is the caste system?
So in early times, more so pre-1950, it was a way to categorize. I don't want to necessarily just call it income levels, but it was a way to categorize genres of people
like class?
into different classes. So
categorize.
You could be the top caste, which is the Brahmin caste, which is more like the religious aspect of it. Doesn't necessarily mean you're the wealthy.
Really? So it's like nobility.
Right. At the level of the Brahmin caste, which is the top caste. Basically, in a quick nutshell, there are three major gods in the Hindu religion.
Wait, I know this. Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahman?
And Brahman.
Yes!
There you go.
Yes!
So Shiva is
I learned something from you.
Shiva is the destroyer. Vishnu is the protector. And Brahma is the creator. Well, now let's take Brahma.
Creation, destruction, protection.
There you go.
Wow.
Let's take Brahma and let's break down the body. So the top caste is the head. The second level is the shoulders. They're the ones who carry the weight.
Yeah.
Then the stomach. And then it goes down from there. Lastly, being the untouchables.
So they relate it like a body.
They describe it to Brahma's body.
Really? All right. And the really. So the untouchables would be the feet, or they would be...
I believe they're the feet, yes.
All right, so that's a much better explanation than the article has, but let's see what the article says here. Discrimination, bullying, and segregation that targets fellow pupils from India's scheduled castes, also known as Dalits. Is that the untouchables?
Dalits are known as untouchables, yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so that puts it all into perspective. That's great. Caste in India speaks, as race does in America, to centuries of social, cultural, and economic divisions. India, since 1950, has had a national system of affirmative action designed to undo that. Among its provisions are one that help the Dalits and other oppressed groups, get into college. So they're likening it to the American race thing. Is that at all correct, or are they just trying to project us onto them?
I think it's basically a way to make a comparison.
Okay, all right, so they're not... All right, I got you. So it's a way for us to understand it, just like we're doing. Yeah, interesting. I don't know, from when I read this article before, it sounded like they were trying to project themselves on, their situation onto the caste system, but we'll take it as an analogy. The IITs are notoriously cutthroat, starting with the admissions process. Okay, here we go. Let's see how this lines up with what you're saying. Some 2.2 million people registered to take the 2021 entrance exam to vie for 16,000 slots.
There we go.
That's interesting. All right, and by the way, RIT had 15,000 people, right? It was 14,999 guys and one girl. So... But RIT had 15,000 people when I attended there, so they're saying 16,000 slots total for all these universities?
For all of them. And
so
that would be out of 2.2 million applications,
so it's basically the size of RIT, except split into 23 locations.
Right.
So that's actually a lot less students than we would have even in one of our American tech schools.
Correct. Now, I think the article is talking about admission, so maybe they're talking about freshman
good point.
size classes.
Good point. All right, so freshman is 16,000.
Right.
Great point. All right, so it's probably 16,000 times 5
Correct.
who attend, but that's still small. Again,
Yep.
right. It's the same size, basically, as our top 5 tech schools.
Correct.
Except there's billions of people.
Right.
All right, so that's really interesting. So they have the same amount of capacity to teach students, except a lot more people. Wow. 15% of those admissions are allotted to students from scheduled castes and 8%, 7.5% from scheduled tribes. To fill those slots, universities sometimes offer seats to students with test scores that are below the cutoff point. And that's probably going to cause resentment. Actually, the next sentence says, caste-based resentment at IITs can run high. So there you go. It's different from your statement of, hey, let's stop the corruption by just going after test scores. So they are bringing in kids who have lower test scores, which causes resentment. Dalit IIT graduates who've managed to get jobs in the U.S. say that such attitudes can be found here in the U.S. as well. Last year, a Dalit graduate of IIT Bombay filed a lawsuit against U.S. Cisco Systems and 2 of his fellow alums, saying he'd experienced caste-based discrimination at their hands. And, I mean, look, as a libertarian, I'm telling people, like, don't discriminate against anyone no matter what. We're all people. Like, it's that simple. Just behave yourself, and we wouldn't have any of these problems,
Correct.
Right?
Be nice. Do good.
That's it. That's all it takes, people. And if you don't, then we have all this chaos in the world. It's that simple. This publicity of this lawsuit prompted a wave of complaints about caste discrimination in American tech companies. And it seemed to blindside the industry. Amit, a Dalit from Karuli, is that right? In the northwestern state of Rajasthan, remembers catching the IIT bug in high school, where he excelled in chemistry, physics, and math. His father and his mother scraped together money to send him for a year of test prep. All right, so he spent a year just preparing for this test?
Oh, yeah.
He took the entrance exam in 2017 and got into IIT Delhi on his first try.
Wow.
I mean, that's right there. Like, that's it right there. You're good, right? You've did the scores. You know, no one's making an exception for you. No one's sneaking you in or whatever. You earned it. His classmates quickly identified him as Dalit. He'd been educated in Hindi language schools, but his English was poor, and his clothes were shabby, and he didn't have a smartphone. Is that... All right, so how do you know someone's a Dalit, aside from that?
So I guess really, some of the culture gets pretty deep. Mm-hmm. Being born and raised in America, I don't have some of that upbringing, but... I come from a well-to-do middle-class family, and I would never go to school in ripped clothes, or I would average in with everybody around me.
Yeah, you and I always had our baggy Tommy Hilfiger clothes on,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Imagine if you did go to a private school and you couldn't afford a pen. And you were trying to find a pen every day at school. And it's not like you forgot your pen at home, so you're looking for a pen. You just can't afford a pen. Or you're wearing clothes from your brother who wore them 6 years ago. They're ripped, they're stained. I guess kind of leads to, I don't want to necessarily call it bullying, but it shows a difference in class.
Wow. So he heard loud comments saying he was at IIT only because of his protected category instead of earning it rightfully. So there you go right there. He wasn't one of those students who was let in just because of some kind of program. He spent a year preparing for this test and he got in right away.
Right.
So that's really interesting. So because of that program, they just figured, oh, he's one of those who they just let in.
Yeah, what do they call it here? When minorities get preferential
affirmative action. Yeah, so
it would be the same thing, right?
But he didn't. I mean, he earned it. He earned it.
But the other students are treating him as an affirmative action case.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I mean, again, as a libertarian here, it's earn your way,
right?
And he did that, so he's good. The caste system traces as far back as ancient India. It comprises 4 core strata with the Dalits at the bottom. Okay, so you explain that, and Dalit means broken, is that right?
Broken, untouchable.
Huh. These divisions still permeate life for Indians, dictating how they work and worship, eat and marry, and own land and vote. More than 200 million out of the 1.3 billion are Dalits. In the 20s, Mahatma Gandhi fought to eradicate it, the separation, and after independence, India introduced an affirmative action program, and within a few years it was reserving seats in colleges for the oppressed groups. An exception is for the creamy layer, the lower caste people who've managed to achieve high status and economic security who aren't eligible for this quota system. So actually, it sounds like this guy Amit would be in the creamy layer where he managed to achieve high status on his own.
Right. So the thing about the untouchables is, I'm not an expert, but I believe out of the 4 castes, the top 3 castes are considered upper caste, and only the Dalits are considered lower caste.
So it's not like this one better than this one, better than this one, better than this one. It's the 3 that are together, and then...
Right. And there are, a Brahmin is always going to say I'm the highest, but they are grouped similarly with the other 2, whereas the untouchables... So, to put it into kind of an understanding of what an untouchable means, if you're a rich, educated person in India, and there's a rat in your house,
okay,
right? You put a mouse trap up and you get it, or if there's a piece of garbage on your front step, you might pick it up.
Okay.
Untouchables do the work that the other castes refuse to touch. So if there's a dead cow on the road, you're not going to find anyone from the above 3 castes to assist in moving that dead animal.
Wow.
If somebody passes away, there's a way that they take the body to wherever they take it to set up for the funeral. Well, that body in Hindu culture can never come home. Ashes don't ever come home from cremation.
Oh, you don't put them on your fireplace.
We don't put them on our fireplace.
And Catholics don't want you to do that either.
Because the concept of touching a dead body is considered untouchable. So you have this caste, the Dalit caste. They are the ones who do that work. A lot of India does not have running water, some of the villages.
Yeah.
So there's no regular bathrooms. So who cleans that up? Well, anyone from the top 3 castes is not going to clean up human waste. That's a job for the untouchables. Take it a step further. You have an untouchable who's begging for money. Begging is a big thing. Now, you could have someone from a higher caste who's also not financially well off, and they're begging. Well,
okay.
And I don't know how you would know this, but
all right. So there are people from the upper 3 castes who are begging.
Sometimes. So let's just imagine you have someone from one of the above 3 castes begging, and next to them you have someone from the Dalit caste begging. You could take a dollar bill and hand it to the person who's from an above 3 caste.
Yeah.
And his hand can touch your hand
and that's okay.
when he takes the money, and that's considered okay.
Okay.
But the untouchable, it's considered bad for you to touch that person because, no, they're untouchable. They clean feces from the road. So you would take your dollar and throw it at them.
Really?
Because...
Even if they hadn't done that. They're in a class that does that. Therefore, at least you still can throw a dollar at them.
Exactly.
Really?
But to go to the meaning of untouchable.
Okay, no, I mean, and this guy says he's not an expert. That's an awesome explanation. Like, you shed a ton of light on that. And here, this is a tech talk show, right? But see all the stuff we learn, folks? Like, do you learn the variety of things that we talk about on this show? Do you learn that on some other tech talk show? Probably not. Can you tell me the story? We're going to go to a break here in the next minute or two, but can you tell me the story of when you last went to India a couple of months ago and you were at a outdoor street food and there were kids and you wanted to give them some food? What happened there?
Like we were talking, the population of India is 1.5 billion people. So naturally there are a significant number of people in poverty. Mm-hmm. So you're driving around Rochester, New York, and you're leaving the old Tops Plaza on Jefferson Road, and there's a guy there asking for money. Mm-hmm. Does he want it to buy beer? Does he want it to get smokes? Mm-hmm. You often wonder, is he a druggie? What is he going to use this money that he's asking for?
Right, and that's like my brother will give them McDonald's gift cards or something. Or buy them, hey, I'll buy you food.
I'll give you food.
Yeah.
In India, it seems like, and don't get me wrong, there are probably bad people begging for money who are drug addicts and alcoholics and whatnot. But the majority of the people who are begging for money are just downright in poverty.
And they're just hungry. Huh.
They want lentils and they want rice and they want, sustainability, basically. My last trip to India, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she was learning and seeing all of this for the first time. But
and she can learn by your example. Uh-huh.
Came up to us and were like, "Will you please feed us?" Mm-hmm. And my little girl is speechless. She comes to me and she's like, "Daddy, I think they're hungry. Can we buy them food?"
And she grew up in one of the nicest neighborhoods in Rochester, yeah.
And that's exactly what we did. And it kind of tore at my heartstrings, right?
But that's awesome. She's learning like that. That's huge.
But you have these children who really, they're not asking you for $1 so they can go home and give it to dad so he can go and buy beer.
Yeah.
They want to eat food from a local stall just so they're not hungry.
So didn't you go up to a local...
So we took the 2 little kids to a local, was like a goza, the dumplings, the Potstickers.
Yeah.
And we sat them down at a little pot sticker cart, and we told the lady, feed them until they cannot eat anymore.
Wow.
And, after you break it down, it must have cost me 75 cents a kid. So, we felt pretty good about it.
That's incredible.
My daughter said, "Hey, they've eaten. Now it's time to buy them ice cream."
Oh, no.
So we got them ice cream, too.
But if they're that hungry, you can't,
You feel it, It's,
but you can't binge eat like that, right, after being hungry. There is a medical reason why you shouldn't do that. Yeah. Huh. Unbelievable. So it costs you $1.50 to make their day.
And you feel so happy knowing that you're giving money to people who really need it.
Directly. Not through some inefficient government or program or what's the word, even charity or whatever. It's real people. And look, folks, we're not asked to save the world. We're asked to help the people around us that we come in contact with. And if we all just realize that, then we would stop fighting with each other. How's that for a conclusion?
Perfect.
I am Mark Anthony Rena. I am so glad you have joined us today. Nevin Hira and I will be back next week for the conclusion of this article and thecomputerexorcist.com if you want to buy my book.